Angel. Angel.
I am asking now Prime Minister Netanyahu, elected now for the 6th time, day one of your 6th term as Prime Minister, what do you need to accomplish for the future of Israel and on behalf of the state?
Well, the first three things are easy. Block Iran, block Iran, block Iran. To survive here, you have to be strong. The strong survive. The weak don't. They perish. The strong are the ones that people make peace with. You don't make peace with the weak, you make peace with the strong.
Born to a generation of Holocaust survivors during the infancy of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, or BiBi as he is more affectionately known, was raised in a home of significant faith and family. Hope was the hallmark of his childhood. Hope that loved ones lost in the genocide would not be forgotten. Hope that victims would be blessed with new beginnings. And hope that the rebirth of the Jewish nation would succeed.
You get peace through strength.
Yeah.
And because Israel is becoming so strong, you could get the Arab countries to come. And this is the story of Israel. I think it's a parable, as I say, the parable of hope.
Beautiful.
It's a parable of hope, you know?
But in 1967, just a few months before his 18th birthday, that hope was threatened. Throw the Jews into the sea. That was the command barked by Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser to Arab forces. Once again, the Jewish people were the target of annihilation. But what ensued was the Six-Day War, which proved Israel to be a formidable military power and forever changed the political, social, and spiritual landscape of the Middle East. The event also solidified BiBi's future as a tireless defender against radical terrorism. Following in the footsteps of his older, beloved brother Yoni, BiBi joined the Israel Defense Forces and served as a captain with the Elite Special Forces Unit, Sayeret Matkal. Both BiBi and Yoni dedicated their lives to rescuing and protecting the vulnerable. For them, it wasn't just missions, it was their purpose. A calling that sadly cost Yoni his life in 1976. Devastated but undaunted, BiBi strengthened in his resolve, his objective, justice, his focus, politics.
You changed the economic policies. Would you agree with my statement that Israel was basically a socialist economy?
Largely.
Socialist,
Largely. This is the one place where I did borrow something from Clinton, where he said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Never waste a good crisis. Well, we had a great economic crisis, and I put in dozens of free market reforms, dozens.
In time, the Special Forces commander turned worldwide diplomat. First, he was elected to the Knesset in 1988. Then, 8 years later, at the age of 46, he made a major leap, ascending to the office of Prime Minister, serving as Israel's 13th and 17th Prime Minister. In this role, BiBi led his home country into an era of peace and discovery. He orchestrated economical as well as technological advances and initiated effective, peaceful foreign relations across the globe. Because of his stewardship, Israel is now an impressive industrial worldwide leader. So it's no wonder that BiBi holds the title as Israel's longest-serving leader. Among his countrymen and before the world, Benjamin Netanyahu is evidence that true leaders still exist.
Tel Aviv, Benjamin Netanyahu. Start with Zionism in general. Where does it begin in your mind?
Where does it begin?
Yeah.
It begins with Abraham.
Love that.
He goes from the land of Ur, which is somewhere in Iraq, to the Holy Land about 3,500 years ago. About 1,500 years later, King David sets up the kingdom of Israel. Before that, the children of Abraham go to Egypt. There's a drought in the land. They have to eat. Well, they go down there. Their brother, whom they sold into slavery, is the number two, the deputy of the Pharaoh. He reveals himself to them in one of the most poignant chapters in the Bible. I don't know if you read the story of Joseph and his brothers.
One or two times.
I think it's one of the most moving human stories. It's so raw and emotional. When he reveals himself to them, and they come to Egypt, they stay there for a few hundred years, become slaves. Moses takes them out, brings them to the Holy Land. Joshua doesn't enter the Holy Land. Joshua conquers the land. But the tribes of Israel are not united. Finally, they choose King Saul. He's beaten by the Philistines, who are not Palestinians. They're a Greek seafaring people on the coast. And they choose a new king, David, who establishes the kingdom of Israel. And it's united for 80 years. Then it splits to the kingdom of Judea and the kingdom of Samaria. Samaria taken out by our exile to the far corners of the earth. That's the 10 tribes of Israel. We don't know where they went. And the 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, remain in Judea. Jerusalem is their capital. And we remained there for a very long time until through successive conquests we're kicked out. But during that time we built, David's son Solomon builds the first temple, and after it's destroyed by the Babylonians, it's rebuilt again, second temple, which is where Jesus overturned the money tables.
Yep.
Right? And that's destroyed by the Romans, and we're still there. We're still holding on to our land, to our cherished homeland.
Your story that you just told is improbable, statistically impossible.
Yeah, well,
How do you explain that?
faith, great belief in our destiny. Even though we were dispersed after the Roman destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, we still clung to our land. Really dispersed only in the 7th and 9th centuries when the last invader, the Arab conquerors, basically made it impossible for the Jewish farmer to live on his land. So, the Arabs always say the Jews were the colonists. No, the Arabs were the colonists. They kicked out the Jews, but it didn't do anything with the land. It became barren. And successive generations of Jews for over 1,000 years. Next year in Jerusalem, it could have been some Jewish ghetto in medieval Europe, and people were praying next year in Jerusalem, or in Yemen, or in Morocco, or in Iraq, the modern incarnation of Babylon. Next year in Jerusalem. And finally, it took this prophet, a modern Moses, whose name is Theodor Herzl. He was a Jew who grew up, was born in Hungary, he became a journalist, and he could see the fires of anti-Semitism beginning to rise in Europe. And he said there's only one solution for the Jewish people, is to act on the biblical prophecy of the ingathering of the exile and to reestablish their independent state in their ancient homeland. And that's the movement he began at the end of the 19th century, which is called Zionism, for Mount Zion in the heart of Jerusalem. And there we accomplished it. So my father's generation was tasked with rebuilding the Jewish state. My generation was tasked with protecting it and ensuring that it has a prosperous and secure future.
How did your father describe his ultimate meetings at the highest level of U.S. politics?
My father was born in 1910, and he was, how shall I say this, precociously wise. When he was 23, in 1933, right when Hitler arose, he said that the scourge of Nazi racism was aimed, first of all, at the destruction of the entire Jewish people. He was perhaps the first or among the first to see that, what many refused to see. And second, he said that Hitlerism would threaten the entire world, and that our task, he said, was to alert the nations of the world to the danger of Hitler, and explain to them that it's not only the Jewish people who would be in danger, but all the nations would be in danger. That's not bad. in 1933
My goodness.
for a 23-year-old. But he couldn't make that much traction. The one who understood that you have to open the gates of the Holy Land. Otherwise, the Jews would be trapped in this Nazi inferno, which they were. And so there was a battle to open up the gates of the land of Israel, which was controlled at that time by the British Empire. And they were afraid of the Arabs, so they wouldn't open it up. The one man who fought to open it up was a man called Zev Jabotinsky, who was the founder of this movement. We're in the headquarters of the Likud movement, which was really founded by Jabotinsky a long time ago. Jabotinsky said, look, there is this Holocaust that's coming. And unless we bust open the gates of what is now Israel and get the Jews out, they'll all be destroyed. And he couldn't make any headway. He was in London trying to do this. And my father came to him in 1939 and he said, you have the right idea, but you're in the wrong place. And Jabotinsky was 60, he was a brilliant man. And here comes this, 29-year-old kid. And he said, why do you say that? And he said, because the rising power in the world is America. And if you persuade America, then they will force Britain to change their policy. And so Jabotinsky called all his staff and he said, you hear this guy, Netanyahu? He's right. We're moving. And they went to New York and began to agitate for a Jewish state there. That's at the start of World War II. Guess who? Well, Jabotinsky died shortly after they came there. And so my father really had to work on his own. And he started agitating for a Jewish state, both in public meetings and in meetings with officials. And first he went to the lowly officials, in the State Department, and they were all Arabists and they were anti-Zionists. They didn't want to upset the Arabs.
Yeah.
But what they heard from my father was too important to just sweep under the rug. So he kept bringing him higher and higher to higher officials. And finally it got to Eisenhower, who was the head of the army after the victory of World War II. And Eisenhower said, why should we support you? And he said, because you're going to end up in a battle now over control of the Middle East, and the Soviets are going to move in, and the Arabs will be like putty in their hands. We will be Israel, this land, this state that we want to establish, will be the bastion of Western values in the heart of the Middle East. He said, but you're only 600,000 people. That's what we were at the time, 1947. How will you hold out? And he said, we'll be the strongest army in the Middle East. And Eisenhower said to my father, how's that possible? And he said, my father said to Eisenhower, General, you've just seen in 2 world wars how we Jews fight for others. Can you imagine how strong we'll be when we fight for ourselves, for our homeland, for our history, and for our future? So Eisenhower was impressed, and he brought the general staff of the United States to hear him, and he wanted a third meeting too. My father worked on public opinion and the opinion of leaders for Zionism, and then the state was established, and he withdrew from public life. And he was a historian, so that's what he did. But he taught me that you have to appeal to public opinion, and you have to appeal to the leaders. To public opinion, you appeal on the basis of justice. To leaders, you appeal on the basis of interest. In the case of Israel, justice and interest collided, because it's just that the Jewish people who were dispersed for so many centuries would reassemble in their ancient homeland, just as the prophets prophesied. But it's also in the interest of the United States, as it turned out, a mighty interest to have a powerful ally representing our common interests and our common heritage in the heart of the Middle East. And this I gained all from my father. Remember, for 19 years between the establishment of Israel in 1948 and 1967, the Arabs openly said, we're going to destroy you. We're just going to wipe you off the map. After our great victory in 1967, 1967 in the Six-Day War, we pushed Israel's borders from the outskirts of Tel Aviv across a big mountain, the mountains of Judea and Samaria, to the banks of the Jordan. Now, you couldn't just conquer us. It was impossible. So the Arab propaganda in those years devised a new theory. It said, first you have to get Israel to withdraw to indefensible lines, and once it couldn't protect itself, then we'll make peace with you. And they called it territory for peace. We would be completely helpless. Arab countries, and the Palestinians especially, unreconciled to Israel's existence, would pocket the territories and then destroy us from indefensible lines.
Former Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin "BiBi" Netanyahu, who is one of today's monumental leaders, takes us on an extraordinary journey in his memoir of purpose, destiny, history, and family. Explore the landscape of Benjamin's life and legacy, from a child, son, brother, soldier, and commander, to an astounding political figure with a mission to protect, unite, and bring liberty and justice to Israel and nations around the world. Netanyahu takes a personal, dramatic, riveting, and detailed account of his life and aspirations. He shares testimonies about his strong Zionist family upbringing, alongside stories of his close-knit brothers Yoni and Edo. He recounts his negotiations and relationships with presidents of our modern history in an eye-opening, heartfelt expression of truth and passion. The memoir of this insightful, formidable leader of our time will stand as an inspiring, defining testament of courage, conviction, and strength. This is BiBi, My Story. Call or go online to get your copy today.
We're here in Tel Aviv. BiBi Netanyahu is my guest. I say BiBi because I'm reading this new story, your novel, your autobiography is coming out. We're talking about it, we're unpacking it, and it's simply entitled My Story. When I say to you, the saints and the sinners, what am I saying when I say the saints and the sinners?
Well, that was sort of a joke that I used to say. I said, Jerusalem is for the saints, Tel Aviv is the sinners, but people travel back and forth, so you can be both.
Yeah.
Tel Aviv is a magnificent international city now. Jerusalem was the spiritual center of our people from the time of King David. That's 3,000 years ago. So nothing compares with the emotional impact of Jerusalem. I wasn't born in Jerusalem. I was born in Tel Aviv, but on day 2, my mother brought me to Jerusalem, so I grew up there. And I have a special affinity to all the things that Jerusalem represents when
You make your king.